can note that in the chat as well. Now I'm going to go ahead and toss it to Council President Evan Glass for opening remarks, and then we'll open it up for questions. Council President Glass, to you.
Well, thank you very much, Jordan, and good afternoon, everybody. I want to start today's briefing by commenting on the terrorism that has occurred to the state of Israel. And I want to condemn the acts of terrorism committed against Israel. My heart is heavy as I think about all the lives tragically lost and those wounded in the horrifying siege. Hamas militants indiscriminately attacked civilians and detained scores of hostages in Saturday's attack. You might not be aware, but last year I visited Israel and I went to the border with Gaza. I visited Kfar Aza, a kibbutz on the border, an area that remains under siege by Hamas forces. I looked through the fence that separates Israel from Gaza. I drove through the town of Sderot, a town that was terrorized over the weekend. And as I drove through the town, I saw bomb shelters next to bus stops, a sign of the peril that that community was already in. And so I want to state my unequivocal solidarity with the people of Israel and send my condolences to those who have lost family members, friends, and loved ones. I do pray for peace. I do remain hopeful that a two-state solution remains possible. But for right now, the situation is very troublesome. And we are going to continue doing everything we can here in Montgomery County to make sure that we remain calm and that violence does not spill over here in Montgomery County. Switching gears a little bit, I do want to note that today is Indigenous Peoples Day, a time when we recognize the contribution of our Indigenous residents in Montgomery County and across the nation. We actually have more than 21,000 residents in the DMV who identify as being either wholly or partially of Native American descent. And the state of Maryland actually recognizes 8 Native American tribes. We here in Montgomery County reside on Piscataway lands. And I encourage all Montgomery County residents to recognize this day, and more importantly, to learn about Native American history and culture. And so as we talk about culture and events happening all around the globe, I do want to share with you that last week, some of you might have noticed I was not at the council session on Tuesday. And that's because I was traveling to Daejeon, South Korea, which is one of Montgomery County's sister cities. And I was attending the Global Innopolis Forum. I was in South Korea at the invitation of Daejeon's mayor, Mayor Lee, and I was accompanied by Montgomery County's Chief Administrative Officer, Rich Madalino, and Matthew Lee, who is a Korean-American leader in our community, and also a board member of the Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation. There were other cities from around the world that were participating in this forum. Those cities were Seattle, Calgary, Canada, Malaga, Spain, and Dortmund, Germany. I want to share that it's important to note that this trip did not cost the taxpayers one dime. All expenses were paid for all attendees by the city of Daejeon. And while we were there, we had lots of meetings and conversations about potential economic and scientific partnerships. Daejeon is the 5th largest city in South Korea, and it has a world-renowned reputation as a hub for science and technology, very much like Montgomery County. And like Montgomery County, Daejeon also serves as a hub of research and technical innovation. And those were the key components of the forum. The city of Daejeon is considered to be the Silicon Valley of South Korea. And we have been sister cities with that city for 6 years, since 2017. Daejeon has 19 universities and more than 500 research institutions. And while I was there for 3 very short days on the ground, I was able to visit the highly regarded Korean Advanced Institute of Science and Technology, otherwise known as KAIST. And I was also able to visit K-STAR, which is the Korean Institute of Fusion Energy, which is building the science behind the world's first magnet fusion device, which is going to provide clean energy for the planet in the coming years and decades. And while I was also in Daejeon, I visited an immigration center that the city has, which provides many of the same services we offer newly arrived immigrants who come to Montgomery County. They offer free language classes, food resources, and healthcare. And it warmed my heart to know that our 2 communities are both on the leading edge of scientific and innovation technology, but also that we are compassionate and that we are taking care of residents who choose to move to our communities. And this is the start of the next phase of our partnership. We started as sister cities, but through this conversation, we're going to continue our relationship as we deepen it and talk more about economic development and technological advancement. And so if anyone has any questions or is interested in seeing any official photographs from that, please reach out to us and we can provide some of that information to you. Another issue I want to bring to your attention is news you might have seen about the Montgomery County Development Review Work Group. This is a work group that was chaired by Delegate Leslie Lopez and was supported by the Montgomery County delegation in Annapolis. And this was a work group that was created last February when our partners in Annapolis were looking for ways for Montgomery County to streamline our development review process. And the group had been meeting for 4 months to examine the county's development review process with a focus on finding opportunities for improvement so that we can improve economic competitiveness. The work group has held multiple listening sessions over the summer to gather feedback from residents about the development review process. And I want to thank all members from the public who attended those sessions and also thank all members of the work group itself. The community provided a lot of feedback, which were discussed at the 9 different public work group meetings that were all held in public. And the culmination of all of those public meetings is a final report that will be coming out, I believe, later this week. And so some of the recommendations of that development review process work group will include decreasing time for review of development projects, improving coordination among county and state agencies, and deepening community awareness and notification and engagement about proposed developments. We all are on the same team here in Montgomery County, making sure that we have enough housing for everybody, making sure we have enough jobs and infrastructure to accommodate our naturally occurring growth. And we want everybody to be aware of that growth, of the development, and of the proposals to accommodate it all. And anytime we take a closer look at improving processes, it really is a win for our residents and our businesses. And as a member of the Economic Development Committee, I'm going to be making sure that we review all of these processes and see what we at the council need to implement, what the planning department needs to undertake, and what can be done on the executive branch as well, recognizing we have multiple levels of government that all review our processes, which underscores the reason for this work group. And I do want to thank Delegate Leslie Lopez for leading this effort and ensuring that we had important conversations about streamlining our processes and cutting red tape. Two other things I just want to highlight for you this afternoon. One, tomorrow we are going to be voting on the pedestrian master plan, which is Montgomery County's first comprehensive vision focused on creating safer environments for people when they're walking around our community. The pedestrian master plan provides detailed and actionable recommendations in line with national and international best practices that is going to improve the pedestrian experience by meeting four goals. First, we want to increase walking rates and pedestrian happiness. We want to create comfortable, connected, and convenient pedestrian networks by enhancing pedestrian safety and building an equitable pedestrian network. The plan also supports the goals outlined in the county's Vision Zero Action Plan, which was approved in 2017, and also the Thrive Montgomery 2050 plan that was approved last year, both of which aim to eliminate traffic-related fatalities and serious injuries. And to date, since the beginning of this calendar year, there have been over 30 people, pedestrians and cyclists, who have been killed, and nearly 1,000 people who have been injured. And that is actually over the last 2 years. 30 pedestrians and cyclists killed and nearly 1,000 people injured over the last 2 years, which is why this is so critically important. And the most recent tragic incident occurred over this weekend in Gaithersburg on Snaufer School Road, where a 47-year-old resident of Rockville, Carlos Tapia Sosa, was pronounced dead at the scene following a collision with a vehicle. And so we are going to pass the pedestrian master plan tomorrow, which follows the passage of the Safe Streets Act. And we're going to continue making progress to making sure our roads are safer for pedestrians, for bicyclists, and for drivers. And the last thing I want to bring to your attention today is an administrative update, but I think a really important one with regards to how the council operates and how we remain good fiscal stewards of our budget and of the taxpayer dollars. The council recently held a retreat on September 29th. And at that retreat, council members collectively decided and agreed that in order to increase budget transparency and oversight, we needed to make some changes as to how we reviewed and approved supplemental appropriations that are transmitted by the county executive. These are funding requests that are made off cycle, that they are made outside of the normal budget process, but they affect ultimately this year's budget and next year's budget as they are part of our general operating budget and use our reserves in the meantime. And so every May, we approve the county's budget so it can be adopted and implemented on July 1st. But whenever there is spending that's needed using general operating funds, in between, we use a supplemental appropriation. And over the last several years, there has been an increase in the amount of supplemental and special appropriations that use general funds, which are funds that we keep for rainy day emergencies and that are actually required of us by our bondholders and our credit rating agencies. These appropriations are transmitted by the county executive to the council, and they authorize expenditures that are not anticipated in that year's adopted budget. A supplemental appropriation is required to enable expenditures of reserves and additional revenues received through grants and other sources, but this only applies for general funds. And what the council decided to do was that whenever a special or supplemental appropriation that uses general funds is sent over, we are going to introduce it on its own, we are going to introduce it on its own and then have a joint committee session of the Government Operations Committee and the Committee of Jurisdiction. So if it is a transportation or environmental related appropriation, it would go to the GEO Committee and to the Transportation and Environment Committee. If it's a housing or a rental related supplemental, it would go to the Government Operations Committee and also to the Planning, Housing, Parks Committee. If the Joint Committee approves the supplemental, it will then go to the full council and it will be a standalone vote. It will no longer be on the consent calendar, voted en masse with other items. So it will get a standalone vote so that it will adhere to greater scrutiny as it is an appropriation outside of the budget. And I appreciate all of my colleagues working with me and working with each other to adopt this new policy, because as we are the fiscal stewards of the budget and are granted that authority by the county charter, we need to make sure that every taxpayer dollar is used properly, and anything that is requested or expended outside of the budget process receives additional oversight. And that is what this process is going to do. And so with that, Jordan, I will turn it back over to you to see if there's any questions about anything I talked about this afternoon.
All right, thank you, Council President Glass. Reporters, if you have any questions, please note that in the chat, or you can go ahead and raise your hand and I'll call on you accordingly. I'll give you a few moments. Reporters, if you have any questions about the remarks made today. Okay, going once, going twice, 3 times. Okay, back to you, Council President Glass.
Okay, well, I appreciate everyone joining us this afternoon. There was another media event an hour earlier for the signing of the leaf blower bill. I was proud to be standing next to the county executive when he signed that bill because the leaf blower bill had been at the council for nearly a year and a half. And I'm glad that as council president and as the chair of the Transportation and Environment Committee, I was able to move forward that legislation, working with my colleagues to make sure that our workers in the landscaping sector receive the support that they need to be doing their jobs in a cleaner, greener environment, and also to be able to receive financial support to transition from gas-powered leaf blowers to electric leaf blowers. And so there's a conversation that's going to continue as we work through those regulations, but the bill has been signed, and there's a lot more environmental work that we have to do here in Montgomery County. And I look forward to talking with you all as we undertake that work. So in the meantime, have yourselves a good afternoon, and we'll talk soon. Take care.